And a Venezuelan court is issuing an arrest warrant for opposition leader Edmundo González, accusing him of forgery of legal documents and sabotage. This comes as President Nicolas Maduro is cracking down on any opposition to his widely disputed election win in July. Dozens of people have been killed and thousands arrested during protests in the wake of his re-election after the tallies shared by the opposition showed González beat Maduro. ABC's Lama Hassan and ABC News senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty join me now for more. Lama, the U.S., the EU, and most South American countries have refused to recognize Nicolas Maduro as the president because he never disclosed evidence of these results. So what's the latest on his crackdown, and what is he saying about this arrest warrant now for González?
Yeah, hey, Diane, you're absolutely right. Those countries that you mentioned say that they will not recognize Nicolas Maduro as having won the election. They say that they want to see detailed voting tallies. They are calling for full transparency. The opposition leader, Edmundo González, whom the U.S., as you rightly said, is recognized as winning the most votes. The opposition alliance did publish voting data online, which it says shows that he won the election by a huge margin of more than 30%. Now, this information has led to González's arrest warrant, and according to the public prosecutor, he is accused of serious crimes, including the document falsification, instigation of disobedience, and system sabotage. And for weeks, from top government officials, they have been saying that González and other members of the opposition should go to jail. And I think what is clear is that this is just another way of the government cracking down on any sort of dissent in the country. Diane.
And this comes after the U.S. Department of Justice seized a plane owned by Maduro, which is the Venezuelan equivalent to Air Force One, basically. The department says that plane was illegally purchased through a shell company and smuggled out of the U.S. So what's the latest on that, and how significant is this move?
Yeah, you know, we heard from the Justice Department yesterday that this plane has been since moved to Florida. It was found in the Dominican Republic, of course, as you mentioned, purchased through the shell company. It's a $13 million plane. Now, foreign forfeiture is not unusual. The U.S. does this when they believe that a country is in violation of sanctions that they put in place. But, you know, I've never heard of it actually happening with a plane, and certainly not, as you mentioned, with a president's plane, Air Force One. I think the significance of this is very clear. The U.S. not mincing words when they say, you know, we do not believe that he is a legitimate elected leader. They've also accused him of narcoterrorism, criminal drug trafficking. There's a long list that the U.S. accuses Maduro of. And they're simply saying we're tightening the screws and we want to put an end to this, simply saying we don't believe he should be in power, Diane.
And Lama, this warrant for González's arrest was issued after he failed to appear before prosecutors 3 times. Can he fight this? What options does he have right now?
Yeah, look, Diane, in short, no, he cannot fight this because, as you rightly said, he did fail to appear before prosecutors 3 times in a row to answer questions on those charges in relation to the election, and the arrest warrant was then issued. And according to some lawyers who the Reuters news agency have spoken to, they said that the law does not allow those over 70 years old to serve sentences in jails, and González just turned 75 years old, which would mean, or could mean rather, that he would be placed under house arrest. I think it is important to mention at this point that the opposition has always denied any wrongdoing, Diane.
And what do these developments mean for U.S. policy on Venezuela?
Well, it's certainly one of the concerns that the Biden administration has is curbing this migration up through the southern border with the U.S. and Mexico. And a lot of those immigrants are coming from Venezuela because of the domestic situation there. So the U.S. believing that if they have a more stable power in Venezuela, that it could curb the flow of migration from Venezuela. So it's very important to them. But, you know, look, the number one thing that the Biden administration is saying with this is that we cannot allow these crimes to stand. So again, they're tightening the screws on this. They're making clear that the Venezuelan president is not out of their reach, and they'll continue to do this.
All right, Lama Hassan and Flaherty, thank you. And I want to bring in Senior Fellow for the Center for Global Development, Danny Bahar, for more on this. Danny, thanks for joining us. How significant are these developments, and what do you see happening next in Venezuela?
Well, I hope it's the beginning of the international community doing everything they can do to put all the pressure possible on this regime who blatantly stole the elections to give up power and to commit to a democratic transition. And what I think we should expect to be next is perhaps more of these type of actions, perhaps more sanctions to the people who are running the country recklessly, and even an appearance by the International Criminal Court against Maduro and his cronies.
So what role does the U.S. play here? Can we expect to see more assets seized after they seized Maduro's plane?
I think the U.S. should play a leading role here. And in part is because I think during the past few years, the U.S. has been trying to use a lot of carrots in the Venezuelan situation, trying to lead some negotiations, trying to concede in some ways to incentivize Maduro to actually go for elections and to allow for a peaceful transition. But that was done. That happened already. The elections happened. The opposition won based on all the evidence we have. And now they're completely refusing to do what needs to be done. So now I think it's time for the U.S. to lead with the sticks and leave the carrots aside, because it seems like the carrots didn't really work here.
So can the U.S. face any legal consequences for this? And how do you see that part of this going?
Look, I think that there's many tools. I don't think that there's any. I think the U.S. should lead by conviction. This is a very important country in the hemisphere that, as the colleagues were saying before, is the source of the largest refugee crisis in the world. There's about 8 million Venezuelans who have left the country. That's 15% of the population. Some surveys said that another 40% would be thinking of leaving the country if Maduro stays in power. That could make it the largest refugee crisis since World War II in the world. So I think really the international community has to stand together and think about a strategy that will be effective in putting all the pressure possible on this regime to step up and to give up power, because the Venezuelan people on their own, they have shown all the bravery of doing things the way that should be done, but the country is kidnapped by Maduro, his cronies, using all the possible institutions to crack down on every possible dissident. And Venezuela needs the international community and the U.S. to lead that effort.
For other countries watching what's happening in Venezuela now and has been for the past few years and decades, what lessons do you think should be learned here?
Well, I think it's important to understand that a country can be very strong and its institutions can be very strong, but that can also be destroyed quite quickly. This is not something that started today or yesterday. It's something that started when Hugo Chavez came to power in 1999. And they've worked for years to destroy all the institutions in a way that will serve them. It will serve the presidency and the people in power, so that they will be able to steal elections. They will be able to steal many other things, the wealth of the country. So I think it's important for the people to be very wary of populists who are coming and promising things at the expense of destroying the institutions, the democratic institutions of countries.
All right, Senior Fellow for the Center for Global Development, Danny Bahar. Danny, thank you.